why, but I think the church went through a season of trying to get as close to the line between the world and the church as they possibly could. I really don't know if it was the world viewed the church as weird, so let's become normal people by involving ourselves in some of the things that the world does, or again, just getting as close as we can to that line. But like you said, if we're to be light, we're going to be over here shining and not anywhere close to looking like the world. And that's part of the raising the standard that you're talking about, and I think it goes along with probably with where you're going to go in Matthew 5 there.
Yeah.
Just how Jesus took the old covenant, and rather than saying, we're doing away with that, I'm here now, but raising the bar on those very laws and concepts from the old covenant.
Yeah, the old covenant tells us, like in Matthew chapter 5, verse 27, you heard it said, don't commit adultery, right? Okay, well, I don't have the capacity to not commit adultery. I'm looking at other women and I want them rather than my own wife, which is leading these people to divorce because their heart is not in the marriage. But the Lord actually tells us what this is all about. He says, you've heard it said that you must not commit adultery. But I say anyone who even looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And so I think we stay away from that a lot of times because we think that when we look at somebody and a thought pops into our mind, let me tell you something, you cannot stop looking at people.
Right.
When you're driving the car, I really don't want to hit that person, but they're naked. So, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
If you drive down campus, I try not to hit people, but I don't want to look at them.
Yeah.
But you have to drive the car. Okay, so I looked, a thought popped into my mind. Lord, I thank you that that's not me. I'm dead to that. I'm not alive to it. We think whenever the thought comes into the mind, that's sin. The scripture says, if you look to lust. That's actually the rendering. If you look with lustful intent, I think the ESV says. My intent is to use this person for my satisfaction to fulfill something within my heart. No, my heart's already taken. In this moment, I love the Lord with all my heart, my soul, my mind, and my strength. And so I yield to him. I don't yield to that thought. And so we cut it off. We move. My wife's right there. We're having a good time. We're just talking. We're trying to get bubble tea, you know? But it says, so if your eye, even your good eye, causes you to lust, gouge it out. Throw it away. It's better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. So when I read that, I need a healthy fear of the Lord. I need a healthy fear of the Lord. When I first met the Lord, I did not feel his loving kindness. The Lord knew what I specifically needed. I needed to tremble in his presence. But it brought about wonderful fruit. So people tell me, well, Sam, you're a little extreme, or you make people feel uncomfortable. And we should feel somewhat uncomfortable how do you not feel uncomfortable watching that on the internet, but you feel uncomfortable around people who are on fire for the Lord? That doesn't make sense. And it's not to exalt anybody. The scripture, it's the light within us. It's Christ in us who should be the hope of glory. Not like, oh, I don't like Jesus and I want to hide from Jesus. The scripture says he's coming back for those who are eagerly awaiting his appearing. Not those who are dreading his appearing because I have a list of things I want to accomplish before I... So we need to uproot our hearts from this earth and realize every provision has been made through his blood that I need to live a life of godliness in him. So do you have anything to...
Just another thing that came from this small group study that I've been doing from John Bevere is he talks about the different kinds of fear, and he has taught through the parable of the talents, where Jesus is telling the parable of the master giving 5 talents to one servant, 3 to another, or 2 to another, and 1 to a third. The first 2 multiplied, and they were considered faithful. The last one maintained and was called wicked and lazy. So he takes that last servant and says, so that last servant said, I was afraid. Well, the first thing he says was, I knew you to be a hard man. So he didn't really know the heart of his master. That was his first issue. And then later he says, and I was afraid. So it's that lack of knowledge of God that leads us to an unholy fear of God.
That's good. Yeah.
And then he talked about the holy fear of God is to be terrified to be apart from him. So like you're talking about, being uncomfortable with certain things, the presence of God evokes change in us. If we're in His presence and living in sin, there's going to be some discomfort there. And
Yes, sir.
when you're living in the Spirit and around those sinful things, there's going to be some discomfort there in a good way of, I don't think I should be watching this or listening to this now. And that's the change that the presence brings about. But I just love that concept of being so attached to the presence of God that that's where that holy fear comes from, of I'm terrified to do anything apart from His leading or to make any decision apart from His direction.
Yeah, even